Hi there, I'm Sarah Zarella, a portrait and wedding photographer and your host for Wedding Secrets Unveiled. This is a podcast where we cut through the complexity of wedding planning, leaving you with everything you need to know direct from the industry experts. If you want to simplify your wedding planning, while having fun, of course, you came to the right place. Join me while I guide you through your planning, starting from your engagement to your big day where you say, I do. After photographing for the past 18 years, I am sharing with you tips and tricks to cut through the excess noise because I believe from the moment you said yes, your planning experience should be a magical time in your life. Here you'll find episodes that are fun, stress-free, and straight to the point, with a fresh, honest take about the reality of what you really need to know about planning your perfect day. Let's dive in. So today, friends, I'm really excited to introduce you to Mike from Artistic Wedding Films. I've known Mike now probably for about 18 plus years. So hello, Mike. Thank you for joining us on my second podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun. I'm excited to be here.
So Mike, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into wedding filmmaking?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been doing wedding videos or films for, goodness, the last 20 years of my career. But prior to doing weddings, I actually shot or got into video production right out of high school. I got into it through the music industry. So I was a keyboard player through my teenage years, played in a Portuguese band, Portuguese-American band.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So that's love for music, was a keyboard player, and then through high school fell in love with the recording arts, like producing, creating music, got me in the studio. And long and the short of it, ended up working at a recording studio right out of high school in North Providence.
So you got into audio first and the music end. So when did the video part come into play?
So started working at the studio, and in that same facility, there was a video production studio on the second level. And we were doing a lot of audio for video, so voiceover work like this, recording it, mixing, final edits and that sort of thing. And about 8 or 9 months into being in that facility, an opportunity came up for an editor position. Had gotten to know the owner because we were doing a lot of the audio for video, and it turned into a career change eventually. That's kind of the short version of it. But yeah, got into video production there, and then just started meeting people, right? How the world works. You network, start, just meeting different people in different industries, and met a gentleman who was shooting weddings. And he said, hey, you have a camera. Do you want to do some weddings? And I said, I had been to weddings, and played at them from the band side, so I'm a social person.
Did you really play at weddings in the bands? Yeah. I never knew this.
We had matching, suits and the whole nine yards. Like very.
I just
90s.
Learned something new today.
Yeah, see, there you go. Well, this is what happens on these things, right? Because when we're working a wedding, we're focused on the clients. We're not focused on us.
Absolutely.
As much, so. But yeah,
so then you started assisting him.
Yeah, so started assisting him, and then there's a gentleman, Philip Krause. We're still good friends. We ended up actually creating Artistic Wedding Video Group back then, back in 2001, 2002, and then. That evolved into running my own business. So our partnership was we had a partnership for about 2 years. He had some family issues. Long and the short of it, didn't work out for him. And he said, "Hey, you put a lot of work into this. Go for it. I'm kind of going in a different direction anyway." So, but we're still good friends.
So you said wedding video group, but now it's Artistic Wedding Films. So why don't you explain to us a little bit about what is a wedding film?
Right. So. Traditionally, a wedding video back in this maybe goes towards is a good explainer for the older folks that might be listening. Moms, dads that had a traditional wedding video, right? A videographer would show up, and back in the days of tape, they would record footage of the bride, maybe the groom getting ready, and then obviously the ceremony. So it was this kind of linear process, right? You saw the day as it unfolded, right? So that was a documentation of the day, a very basic recording, fly on the wall, kind of in the background. But the technology also was very different back then. You had big bright lights because the cameras and the sensors weren't at the quality level that photography was. Even
rolling tripods
with huge car batteries, like really weird, like because the technology was different, right? The great thing is the technology has evolved. But what a wedding video was a straight documentation. Now, as editing technology, and back then, so when I first started working in video production, it cost $100,000 to have a recording, an editing suite. The tape decks, the electronics that went into it. As technology evolved, as computers became more of a mainstay and a tool in video editing, and then nonlinear editing, digital nonlinear editing came into play with computers. The technology got more affordable. It got more accessible for the wedding industry and for even just student filmmakers. And so as the technology evolved and got better, the quality of productions improved. And as small production companies, you always wanted to give your clients the best product. And that's where we, about 10 years ago when the whole digital SLR revolution for video filmmaking or video and wedding filmmaking became a viable option, we kind of revamped our product and started creating films versus just a straightforward video. Now, what does that mean to like an end couple, right? A film is very similar to, I try to equate it to like a finished album that a photographer produces, right? If we gave you raw footage.
Or honestly, maybe a movie. Like,
right.
I have seen your work. Your work to me, it looks like a movie than like an actual video documentation of someone's wedding day.
Right. On a basic level, we still document it. So, a lot of people are always like, oh, do we get to see the whole thing? Absolutely. We have different packages and collections that can include those different things. But yes, ultimately, we're trying to create, a film or a something that is going to a piece that when you hit play, it's going to time warp you back to that day, right? We're trying to encapsulate that day so that when you hit play and the way we've created it and produced the final, the final edit, it's going to re-evoke all the same emotions that you had on the wedding day itself, right? That's our goal with our films.
How long is like the finished product normally?
So our highlights film is in the 5 to 6 minute range. We found that that's kind of the sweet spot for a really great timeline or time frame to be able to tell enough story, because in a film you have to set up the characters. So our cinematic approach and why we call it a film versus just continuing to call it a video was to differentiate the product, number one. Now, a lot of studios in the last 10 years have started using that term film, and so it can kind of be confusing to the end client, and that's where we recommend that they definitely do some research. You have to know what a studio it's not apples to apples always, just like with photography or just like with catering or design. There's a creative portion to what we do, and that affects how and what we call our finished product. But a film ultimately should be something that it should be a piece that tells a story, that gets you emotional about what you're watching, and you connect with those characters. And that's our approach when we're putting together a film of a wedding. We're looking to introduce the characters in the best way possible, and that's typically the bride and groom, and then have the plot kind of evolve and do it in a creative, interesting, edited way, not just randomly throwing it together, but really taking and paying attention to transitions and in the editing. A lot of times, a lot of studios, and this is kind of a side note, but a lot of studios don't like that editing process because it is time consuming. But that's really where the magic comes all together. You need to have or put the time into the editing to create that final product that couples are really going to enjoy. And that's what makes a film a little different than just a linear or a straightforward video.
For our listeners, are there companies out there still doing more of the video production versus the film production?
I've seen in my research, and every once in a while, every 5 or 6 months, I don't make it a
job.
A regular, I don't make it a job or a task that I have to do all the time. But every once in a while, I will go out and just go down a list of names and see what people are creating. And I see studios putting out films, but really they're not even recording audio properly, so you can't hear the bride and groom well. So from a technology standpoint, they sometimes don't understand techniques from sound recording to proper camera, holding. A lot of handheld shaky shots. So that's where researching the product and watching the final that studio's work is super critical. It's really important to not just call somebody up and say, hey, what's your price? It's like when you go buy a car, you have to know whether you want to be in that car. You're going to be spending a lot of hours driving it. So you want to do your research and know that you're buying something that, fits to your personality and style. Because just like a car, you can get from point A to point B, and just like a video, you can watch what happened that day. But in the end, when you finish playing it, it should have emotionally moved you to go, wow, that's really cool. Like, I really got to know that couple, and that their story was awesome, and their wedding day was beautiful, or it was shot well, or not, if you get the opposite.
And just like a car, there's different types of cars. So my question to you is, what's the average investment for a good wedding video or film?
So I found a professional video product, and this is just general information. If any studio is charging less than $2,500 to $3,000,
for how long? That, because I know if I was listening to this, which I am, but I'm just saying I also kind of know the answer to this a little bit. But how long is that full coverage day? What?
And that's where it varies from studio to studio, and where apples and oranges, you're not really comparing apples to apples all the time. So, when you do your research, look at the product, see if the quality of the work is there. And if the quality of work is there, then set up that, make sure you take the time to get to know a little bit more information, because every studio is a little bit different.
But a red flag for somebody would be if they're charging less than $2,500, they're probably not producing a film.
Right. And they're probably not, they don't have the experience or have the equipment invested or the business structure that, companies like yourselves or myself or the more experienced companies, the more established companies have been out there. We've been doing this for 20 years. We're insured. We have, all the right, business structures again, and also the technology. Like my studio currently, we own probably 20 cameras.
Right.
Like of all sorts. And that's because we do go out in multiple
and the latest
teams.
Technology.
Right. The latest technology. And that's important because, again, as I mentioned before, the product is different and it's better because we can do a better job. But to go back to your question, if someone is charging less than $2,000 or $2,500, they're either a beginner, or their product is not quite as up to par. They might be somebody who's been in the industry even longer than 20 years, and now they're kind of on the they're on the back nine, right? To be polite about it, right? They might do a professional job. It might be clean, but it's not going to be potentially as creative or as advanced in
trending.
Or trending, exactly. That's probably the better response to it. So, but a good film. So that's a video. I mean, that's
right.
Kind of like
so that's a video.
And it's kind of confusing because isn't a video a video? Yeah, you hit play and it just starts and you watch it, right? Again, that's where the finished product and the creativity that studio is going to bring to your finished piece makes a difference, right? So our films start at $5,200. There are studios out there that charge less, but we start at $5,200. But you're getting a team of two. You're getting all the right technology, all the right cameras, audio, lighting. The experience to work well with the other professionals. So, I mean, that's a huge part, and we can talk about that afterwards. But, having a good working relationship with the other team members, even if you haven't worked with somebody, before, it's more of a philosophy than it is about knowing that other, photographer and DJ or band, or venue coordinator. It does help to have experience, and when you walk in, see people that it's going to be a smoother day.
I definitely also think, too, especially when it comes to your photographer, at least I know, Mike, a lot of people ask me about videographers and who I recommend or who I've worked with or who I work well with. And I think they're onto something because we do work side by side together all day and we're kind of chasing the same light and the same angles. Right. So, I think you're onto something where it's important to have someone who's experienced and who knows the different venues and different locations and has been around for quite some time. So what goes into a wedding day and how do you work with other professionals at and also on a wedding?
So our process starts prior to the wedding. In filmmaking, you have to prepare. It's a team sport. There's multiple people doing jobs that are simultaneously as important. A little different than photography. And I tell this to my clients, and no offense to photographers, but there are times that my the second camera person, Dan, his angle is actually more important than my angle. I'm getting something creative where he's actually getting the master shot, right? And the example that I always tell couples about, and for filmmaking purposes, when they go, oh, hey, we only need one person. And they're obviously budgetary constraints are usually, prompt that question. But really they don't understand that for filmmaking, if we're not getting that main shot and then the reaction shot, that product's going to be totally different.
You don't have a story there. That's
right.
How you're creating the story.
Yeah, and that's important to have that main action and then the supplementary shots to make that that even better. So preparation. Going back to your question, so we have a questionnaire that we send them. Sometimes couples look at it and go, "Oh my goodness, we didn't even think about some of these things," because some of it is logistics, but some of it is getting to know the couple and getting to know the couple because we want to tell their story really well, right? So if a couple is not super concerned about all the details in their reception, and they're like, "Hey, my grandmother's super important," we might just get 2 or 3 shots of the reception area prior to guests coming in and focus more on the people. Right. And so for us, again, it's telling that story and putting together that finished, quote unquote, film that's more like an album. And so, it's not just the raw stuff. Right. So knowing all that, knowing who's going to be there in terms of the other professionals.
So right when you're walking into the day, you kind of have the background already of your couples and their story and what's important to them and what's not.
Right. And I also know who's going to be there, who we're going to be working with. It's not a shock or a surprise to me. Right. If I need to call someone, if I've never worked with a photographer prior or a band, recording audio is super important. And the band's audio, like I need permission. That's their equipment to plug into it to record it. There are ways to do it without it, but...
Can you explain to the listener a little bit what you mean by plugging in and recording it?
Yeah, so, people think of microphones as something that just projects sound. The speaker actually projects a sound. The microphone, converts that sound into a signal, and then the speaker projects it, right? So, we need to record what's coming out of the band sound system for toasts, for introductions. Don't get me wrong. We can mic up Father of the Bride if he comes up, and then Maid of Honor, and then Best Man. But now we're kind of running around, and, it's creating another step that is not necessarily needed, and, sometimes sets people off, right? So back to the experience. We want to give everyone the best experience. They know that they're going to have to hold a microphone, but if we have to go up there and put a microphone on them, it interrupts them. It might throw them off, and people don't like public speaking. We know that. We want to make them feel as comfortable as possible. So, and that's something that we even do leading up to the reception. Even one of the first, if I have an opportunity to talk to the Maid of Honor, like, oh, hey, did you write your toast? And, oh, yeah, I'm kind of nervous about it. I'm like, oh, yeah, when you get up there, we coach them a little bit. We almost start giving them that additional comfort. Just like you tell your couples, hey, when we're setting up for family shots, you're going to want to do this and you're going to want to do that. You prep them. So all of that experience creates a better and a more fun experience for the couple and their family and friends there, right? So this is all part of like how we work together. Calling a photographer if I've never worked with them, calling the sound engineer or the management company of the band or the DJ and saying, hey, I'm going to need to record this really well for the couple. It's really important for them. Is this cool if we do that? And 9 out of 10 times, not a problem. Sometimes the conversation needs to be a little bit longer, but that's something that we do on the back end. It's not just show up and hit record. It's preparation so that you can execute really well and have, really fun experience, or the couple can have a real fun experience because everything's going super smooth on our end. You're taking away as many of the, pitfalls that could happen on the wedding prior to the wedding. And that's a lot of the preparation. There's preparation on many levels. You have to prepare with your florist. Your florist needs to know what flowers you want, your menus, all those main things. But these are the things that we do on the back end that couples go, oh, I didn't even know that happened.
So if a couple went with you, though, you pretty much handled the entire back end for them. So that way, coming the day, they just have to get married.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the wedding film, I mean, there's so much that goes into a wedding day. But yeah,
for the wedding film.
Yeah, it's not we're not, and that's where having proper experience and having done this over and over again and having a good system for myself and my team members makes the day run smoother for the couple, and then you have a good time like we do when we're shooting.
Always. I love it when you're on the job, because honestly, it makes my job a little bit easier. Like when I see Mike's on the job, I'm like, oh, all right, great. And I say that because a lot of times for photography, you talk about how you have to get the creative shot and then the main shot, but also too, a lot of the times I have to also direct. So Dan and I, my second shooter, we always joke around when we know that Mike's on the job. I'm like, oh, guess what? We don't have to direct, because it's a good banter that
it's
we
a
have.
good back and forth, and it takes a bit of pressure, which allows you to be creative in different ways and allows me to. And that I tell couples that all the time. So during what we call, so for us, when you're shooting your family shots, we record video of it. We try to get some creative shots of it, but that to us is not as huge of a story or visual elements that we want. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of times where we get great shots of the groom and his grandmother, and we get those in between moments where they, they'll kiss, or they might have a joke, or there might be some banter that becomes part of the audio that we use in the film, right? But it's not. In terms of the pressure that is on the photographer staging all those shots, so you make sure you have a documentation, a good, good photograph of those two individual people, or that group, or couples, for instance, like the mother, bride and her mom. Like that's usually, really important photo. That's less important to us in terms of capturing that, because we know that's going to come from the two of you or from the photographer, and you're going to have that in your list of shots where, we want to get those creative shots with a couple. And we know photographers do too.
Absolutely.
But that element of the day, I always, in our questionnaire, it says plan on 20 minutes. We don't necessarily need those 20 minutes, but a lot of couples don't understand that.
It takes time to walk in and out of a shot. And that's what I mean by direct. I don't think that we're actually directing the shot. We're just directing people to let things move smoothly, which I actually was wondering, what is the one thing you love about your job?
Honestly, it's being able to, and this doesn't happen all the time, but when we can watch or have a couple watch our films and see their reactions, it's also a learning. Like when we do a same day edit, that's probably one of the best things that we love to create. We don't do a lot of them. Unfortunately, a lot of couples don't find it, a service that they want or a finished product that they want, and that's okay. But it gives us an opportunity when couples do. It's really awesome to see people's reactions to different things. And sometimes we're like working really hard to get these beautiful cinematic shots, and we're like, that shot's coming up, and you're expecting them to like just light up with it, right? And really, they light up at like the flower girl walking down the aisle, and you're like, oh. Like it tells you that being or producing a cinematic product is our focus, and I think our clients want us to be creative and produce something unique and different. But ultimately, a lot of what we find is really important to couples is the family, right? It's their families, those moments and those shots and things that they weren't able to see, right? So that's kind of my favorite thing, is being able to see what and how people react, to our films and to the shots that that we produce, and that's what we love. That's what I totally love about being able to capture that. I
think that if you start to ask around to a lot of wedding professionals, I think we do thrive on that energy. Yeah. That's ultimately what we're doing. We're literally watching people on the best day of their lives, and you, my friend, are documenting it, and you're you're creating a beautiful film for them. Yeah. And I think that it's a good point that you basically are watching them react to their day that you've just preserved for them forever.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So we're the year 2021. The lovely year.
Yeah.
We have a pandemic. I don't know. It depends on who you ask. In front of us, right here, or behind us. I don't know. But we are in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
How has filmmaking been affected by the lovely COVID?
Yeah, it's been challenging. Obviously, it's just as stressful for us to run our businesses as it is for our clients trying to plan a wedding. I mean, it's difficult. So we can we've definitely sympathized with clients and been as flexible as possible. At it. I think one of the saviors and again, I experienced it this past Saturday at Castle Hill. We did a live stream. We were there for an hour. We just live streamed their ceremony. We do record it, and they get a copy of it. But it's more of a basic product, just a single camera. And to see the couple walk up to the Zoom. When you say live,
sorry, not to interrupt you, but when you say live streaming, why don't you explain a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so we have a professional live streaming setup where we can live stream to YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitch, or Zoom. Zoom has been the more popular one because people know it. They can also interact with their guests, and it's really great. It's all about connections, right? It's all about family. Is this
for people who are not present?
Correct.
Got
so because of the limitation and size of weddings that are happening, this particular couple had 16 guests. 16 total people there, including the bride and groom, and then professional photographer, officiant, and myself. And we live streamed it through Zoom. So we have a professional setup where we can, transmit, the video wirelessly to our laptop, and then our laptop, we have it connected, through Zoom, and have the software all set up. So we're not tethered. We can kind of float around within 500 yards, which is a really great setup for us and for the couple, because now they can get a truly professional video without a laptop being in the way. Again, it's still about the experience. It's still a wedding, so you don't want to have equipment impeding what's happening, right? So that's always our goal. But the cool thing is being able to see couples, then interact with their family or their friends after their ceremony, do a little toast with them. It's really great. So being spring of 2021, we did a lot of that last year. We probably did about 15 or so live streams last year that, were able to connect families, people that couldn't be there, and they could, obviously remotely log in and experience, the wedding with a couple. That's probably been the biggest challenge. Again, the reschedules and all that has been, part of every wedding professional's experience, in working with couples and readjusting dates and that sort of thing. But, being able to offer a product that still connects people and creates an emotional connection, especially when people haven't seen each other. Sometimes people are on the Zoom and they haven't seen family members in the longest time, especially grandparents. Like, the grandmother couldn't stop. This is after the ceremony, but she kept waving to everybody. She kept pushing buttons to try to see other people, and that to me that brought me more joy than the most beautiful sunset shot, right?
Because they haven't been around each other.
So seeing people connect and being able to have joy together is a really big thing that's happened. That's brought me joy, right? So seeing people being joyful because of that. So. Assisting in that connection is super important to me.
So, Mike,
yeah,
do you think we're going to have somewhat of a normal wedding season?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the 20 years that I've been in the wedding business, wedding videography and then filmmaking, I've been part of a lot of different associations in our area. We've got ILEA. They're called ILEA now. They used to actually be called ISIS. ISES, but anyway.
I do remember this.
Yeah, right? So funny. Anyway, a little side note. And just different associations, chambers of commerce, and then BNI and that sort of thing. I participated as a board member in a lot of these associations. There was a coalition that was started by a really great person, Alison Barbera. She was a makeup artist, back in the beginning of things, like how are we going to handle this? What's going to happen? So this coalition, obviously evolved, and a number of us, including Luke Renchan, a good friend of ours, that is more in the forefront of this and has a seat at the table. So ultimately, we had to go from being wedding professionals to lobbyists, in between their counselors and all that. We're kind of bartenders too, a little bit, trying to help people. Hey, don't worry about it. This is what we see happening. This is what's going on, and just talking people off the ledge. Look, it's anyway. We're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It really has evolved. I mean, being safe is super important. I think we all care about our clients, have from day one. A lot of, what happens on the wedding day is again, producing and giving them a really great experience. So it's not just about the photography that day. It's not just about the video. It's not just about a cake. It's the entire experience, that they're getting. So this is part of it. So 2021 and having a seat at the table, working really hard and becoming a lobbyist, as you mentioned, or part of that, rallying and getting attention for our industry. This is probably, by the time this airs, there's a story that's going on Channel 12 locally here that's, being produced because of it, so that we're working not only on our behalf, but also on the behalf of our, our couples and our industry, right? Ultimately, right?
And the couples.
And the couples, because, we're trying to, put things into place. The medical professionals are doing their best to keep everybody safe and to offer their advice. But sometimes your doctor will tell you, just eat lettuce and run 20 miles a day, right? That's not always feasible. That would probably make you the healthiest person in the world, potentially, but that's not always reasonable, right? So we're trying to balance, good health guidelines with people being able to experience their life events. And a friend of ours put it very well. Experiencing weddings and birthdays and, and these big life events is what, really allows us to be humans, right? Those experiences. Otherwise, you're just getting up every day and going to work.
Exactly.
Right?
I think about her quote often.
Yeah.
It actually sums it up very well.
It was Faith Dugan. I'm not quoting it right. I'm not even paraphrasing it well, but
yes,
that's a general
we
gist.
have a photographer friend, Faith Dugan. She did a wonderful speech at one of our rallies.
Yep.
And I think her words really touched us all because I hear you bring it up. I always think about it. I hear other people bring it up. That's exactly it. I mean, that's what your wedding professionals in the wedding industry is doing. I mean, we are creating and involving and life's events. And what is life without it?
Yeah.
Without the joy?
That's right.
You talked a little bit about how you got involved with the industry, where the pandemic was involved. But how else are you involved with the industry?
So beyond this coalition, which has taken up a lot of our time running our businesses and participating in the coalition, I'm still a member and actually vice president of Rhode Island Wedding Group. That keeps us active with other industry professionals. It's an association that we network with each other. We find out where what's going on, and that's all part of the research, right? So knowing that different people have now are not working at different venues and that sort of thing, it helps us, or where they've moved to if they move positions. The networking that happens within that association, and even ILEA. ILEA is an international association, and we find out what the latest design trends are and the things happening across the United States that sometimes are a good aid to clients that are happening here. One of the things that happened probably about 10, 12 years ago in Rhode Island was the Station Night fire. And after that,
we just actually celebrated the anniversary of that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that was a horrific event. And again, a lot of amazing people, were lost and family and loved ones. But, that changed the regulations for, open flames at events. So candles and those, those elements became a very big precaution. And one of the things that, a lot of couples love to do at weddings was having, the sparkler exit. Sparklers. Right? That was a huge downside. Now couples couldn't have sparklers because the fire codes had changed. And so companies, in the last 3 years, there have been, these literally non-pyrotechnic, but pyrotechnic-looking sparkler-type systems that have come out. And so, you can actually create these, sparkler-type effects without fire, right? And so bringing those trends or seeing that those things are happening and attending events where some of these new technologies and tools and just styles of weddings and equipment that can be used enhance an experience. And sometimes your couples go, oh, I was loving, I wanted to do this kind of thing. And you're like, well, I've got a solution for you. Even though it doesn't even serve me, it has nothing to do with video, or it doesn't help me in a sense to, sell my product.
You're a trendsetter, Mike.
Well, I don't know about that.
No, but you're up to date with the trends by getting involved with your industry. Absolutely. Actually, as you're sitting here talking about this, there's things that I even forgot about, like sparklers. That's the number one question that we always get, and you have a solution for that. Right.
And again, it's about, it might not necessarily be, the sparkler itself, but it's something that can simulate that type of effect, and it creates that, and different couples, different people have different desires and different design aspects that they want to incorporate into their wedding that they maybe have been dreaming for forever. Like trends like a first look, people sometimes don't understand where that came from. There's huge benefits to it, but if you've always dreamed that you're only going to see your groom or the couple, whoever your couple is, if you're only going to see your significant other as you walk down an aisle, then if that's your dream, I'm not going to push you in another direction. I'll tell you what the benefits are in one way or the other of doing a first look or not doing a first look. And it depends if you're having a church wedding or you're not. All of these things come into play. So every wedding is different, and we want to tailor what we're doing to make the day the best it can be for you.
Mike, you talked a little bit about trends. I'm going to put you on the spot here. I would love to know, in the 20 years that you have been filming, what's something very unique that kind of still resonates with you that maybe a couple did at their wedding, or maybe some advice, or just something that maybe some of our listeners can take away and I don't know, just share a little bit about something that was like unique that you remember.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen couples. We did a wedding 2 years ago where the groom got his pilot's license. His grandfather, flew, fighter planes in World War II. And the father surprised them with, a flyby of these, Mustang
cool.
airplanes right at the tail end of their ceremony. We've obviously seen, fireworks are beautiful and can be really great. The ones that stick like that airplane one that was really special. Like you could see the groom tear up and get emotional. Like number one, he didn't know about it. So it was a surprise to them. And usually the couple is the host of the wedding, so there's not a lot that they don't know about.
That they don't know about. So what was perfect about that was that there was a surprise for him. Now, granted, it was a big surprise, but you think that even just the smallest surprises are special?
Absolutely. The more personalized they are, the more special they are. So again, just a locket with a picture of, a grandmother or a grandfather, maybe the bride or the groom were, close to each other. We've seen special messages written into cufflinks and,
cute.
Things like that. It runs the gamut, but, there's so many amazing ideas and, Pinterest and Instagram are great for that stuff in terms of researching what might work well for you, or a special surprise that you might want to give, your bride or groom or significant other. There's so many ways to do it. And just personalizing it, like even some of the same day edits that we've done over the years have been a surprise from the parents to the couple.
Oh, that's a great idea. That I didn't even think about that. The same day edit. So a lot of times your couples don't even know that's coming.
Right.
Oh, isn't that awesome?
And the same day edit doesn't necessarily need to be presented that same day. It basically means that we're going to produce,
something pretty quickly. It could be presented like next day at the brunch.
And those are the ones that have been more the parent surprises when you've got this wedding weekend, and it helps extend your wedding. This is, weddings are very much like the holidays. There's all this preparation, months of preparation, and then boop,
yeah,
the holiday comes and, Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever, it comes and goes and it disappears. So anything that you can do to kind of prolong your wedding weekend, in special ways that are meaningful to you. It doesn't necessarily need to be a video. It's just either gatherings or, time together. Those special things, will help you slow down the weekend and enjoy it more with your family and friends. And one of my favorite moments at my own wedding was Eric Brown, who was my photographer back then. I've been married for 13 years. He had a shot of my wife and I just standing there looking on at the reception with a big fisheye, with a fisheye lens. Yep. So it's a big wide shot of us just watching what was going on. And I always tell couples, if there's any advice that I give you, whether you hire me or not, if you can take 30 seconds or a minute at all the major stages of the day, like before you walk down the aisle, after your ceremony, at cocktail hour, just, go take 30 seconds, walk away and just look on to what's happening. It'll, number one, help you slow down the day. It'll help you take it in and enjoy it more, right? I think you'll remember the day better because you've taken those 10, 15, 30 seconds. If you take a minute, but just even 30 seconds just to don't answer any questions, don't do anything, just watch what's happening.
I think that's a huge takeaway, Mike. I do. It's something that a lot of people need to do more. And like you said, it just takes a second, but just to process it.
Yeah.
Mike, where do you usually see yourself working at most? What areas, Southern New England, Rhode Island, Newport, Providence, Massachusetts, where are you mainly at?
We work probably half of our weddings in Newport, Rhode Island. So that's kind of our base in a lot of the venues there. But for us, it's great to and we've done we've actually had some interesting weddings where we've had weekends where, on a Friday night we're at, a venue and then we're back the next day and it looks completely different because the couple has personalized it with their decor. You might have farm tables one day and you might have, crystal, chairs the next, right? Or, these plexiglass clear chairs. So the venue can look totally different and that's quite interesting. I like working wherever we're, can be creative. So having a change of venue and for the visual, people, I don't want to work at the same place all the time. Don't get me wrong. It's a comforting thing, but it's also creative to be able to go to Hildene up in Vermont.
It's probably very rare that you've been somewhere that you haven't been before.
I mean,
then again, you do travel, don't you?
Yeah, we've done a lot of destination weddings. I say a lot. we'll do like 1 or 2 a year. So Florida, Puerto Rico. We've been out to Wyoming, California, Virginia. Charlottesville is beautiful. It's really a college town, so it kind of feels like Newport, but now it's all hills. You don't have that ocean, that ocean element to it. But like I mentioned, even Hildene up in Vermont, it's Manchester, Vermont's the Lincoln family home. And the setting's gorgeous. It's like up on a hill with big mountains to the left and the right of it. It just has a completely different – it actually feels a little like Rosecliff, but different, right? The garden's a little different. And so those visual – you get inspired by the various visual, inspirations that each venue will give you and that each couple might want, right?
I think it's also really important, too, for people to understand that, when you've been doing this for 20 years like yourself, you probably get a lot of questions like, have you filmed at this location before? And I think it's a good point that you just brought up that something that is important to you is to actually find a location you haven't filmed before because you are a professional. So you don't need to be there prior to figure out the proper lighting and what you need to do. Yeah,
and that's something that we go over with a couple. Like, have a plan A, so have a good timeline. Having a good timeline is important. So if in terms of your visuals, if you want a beautiful sunset shot, you know what? That sunset's going to be at a different time. And even if you plan, so let's say sunset's at 7 o'clock, if the day's overcast and cloudy, the sunset's not going to happen or might be slightly earlier because clouds roll in. That happens to us a lot in Newport. You have this interesting effect that, the sun's there and then literally 30 seconds later it's just gone.
It happens to me a lot at Rosecliff. Because the sun sets on the other side, but at the same time, if it's a cloudy day, you won't even get that rose look in the sky.
Yeah, it's totally different. Mm-hmm. And that's where I tell couples, keep that in mind. You have your plan A, but, with certain elements like ours and even other, it's a live event. There are hundreds of people at your wedding. Things happen. So you have to don't look at, something happening at exactly this time, this way as if it doesn't happen, it's not negative. It's not a bad thing. Your day is still going to be amazing. It's still going to be special, and that's what you want to focus on. Don't focus on I didn't get I didn't get 3 olives in my martini. There was only 2. Like, you know what? Order another one. Just get a second martini. But go with the flow a bit. Let the day happen. It's slightly organic, and we as professionals can adjust for that and give you our best recommendation. So, if there's a certain light that you want and you want to lean on us, let us tell you, hey, this is probably the best time to do it, or probably in the next 10 minutes is going to give you that window. But again, we're dealing with nature and and things that are out of our control on some level. But having experience and knowing the venue, that's where knowing the venue does kind of help a little bit. There are certain spots where you can get certain light and get certain things, but as visual professionals, as visual artists, we can improvise all the time. Absolutely.
So the $1 million question: why is it important for a couple to invest in wedding films?
It's going to be that time capsule. I think it goes back to the very first thing that I said. I think first of all, to plug you, a photographer is super important. My wife and I have tons of wedding pictures up on our walls. We don't have our wedding video playing every time. But when you hit play on that wedding video, it's going to, number one, memorialize your day. So on a basic level, even if you got a very inexpensive videographer, if you had a friend record it with an iPhone, you know what? They're going to capture things that you didn't see from a perspective that you didn't see. So on one level, that's what we're doing. But in terms of a film, if it's creatively being put together, not only can you have a recording of your day, a documentation, an archive of that day, but you can have a creative film, and it's pretty rare. And with good cinematography and music, and and the right melding of the right pacing. Again, back to that editing that I mentioned earlier. Pacing and then the editing is what's going to create a real emotional, cinematic finished product that is, for us or with Artistic Wedding Films, for the kind of product that we like to create. And on a basic level, it's happened to me. I've had my father-in-law passed away a year ago. My brother-in-law, who was my best man at my wedding, passed away like 5 years ago. So it preserves them. It preserves them. And when you've lost a loved one, you you end up grasping at every memory and every aspect that you can relive moments together.
I think also, too, something that's powerful in what you do that you don't get at the still image is that, we're talking about the loss right here, but is that you hear their laugh again, or you see their mannerisms. And yes, I know in my industry, unfortunately, I get called often when there's funerals. Yeah. They go back to their wedding images because honestly, everybody looks awesome.
Right.
But there's something to be said to hear that chuckle.
Yeah.
Or just to see their mannerisms. Yeah. And that's actually kind of led me to the next question.
Yeah.
Do you get that often, Mike, that people maybe regret not having a wedding film at their wedding?
We've heard it. It's interesting. I mean, obviously, once the day's happened, you can't go back and recreate it. I mean, you could, but that rarely happens. We hear it often from people that regretted not doing it. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's once you haven't done it, then it's hard to go back. Right. Like I had mentioned, you can't. It's really difficult to go back and redo a wedding day. And so
I did that once.
Really?
Yes.
No kidding.
Yes. That's another story for another day. But I actually
how funny.
I actually I can actually sit here and tell you as we're talking that I've done that one time. It's not the reason why you think. Unfortunately, this particular bride, she did not like her wedding images.
Oh, wow.
So this was recently. This was about 2 years ago. So she was going to hire me, and we talked about investments. She decided not to.
Right.
So she went and hired somebody else, and she just wasn't happy. And at first, when I first got the phone call, I thought it was kind of bizarre. I'm like, what? And I've been doing this for 18 years. I'm like, you're going to literally, she hired the table linens, and she hired the florist, and we went back to the Biltmore at the time. Now it's a Graduate.
Yeah.
And got her mom, got her dad, got her maid of honor, but not the rest of the wedding party, and was going to reenact the ceremony and the details. And you know what, though, Mike? After I did it, it actually wasn't crazy to me. Like it was probably the best thing I know I could have done for her, because she felt like she walked away with what she visioned in her mind.
Right. And again, that's where a wedding is such a milestone in someone's life. They've prepared for it. They've thought it. Some people, I mean, don't get me wrong. Everybody has different likes, tastes, and in essence, desires, right? So what's important to you might not be important to me, but for that bride and that couple, it was important for them to be able to memorialize it in a way that they were happy with. And
you talked about earlier, too, about why we do this. It was honestly, when I tell the story, it wasn't crazy at all. It was an instant satisfaction for me that I was able to do that for her. But, but normally, like you were saying, you don't recreate a day. No. So, it's important, I think, for people to understand at least the takeaway. I've seen your work. I've worked side by side with you. You're the best of the best. But I think it's important for them to hop on your website and just see your films, because kind of going back to what we were first talking about, it's not a video. It's really an artistic film. It really is.
And that was one of the reasons why we chose the name, why we have films in the name. Again, that term has become kind of an industry word that people interuse in different ways. And so I think what's important and a good takeaway for anybody listening to this as a couple, research and watch the work. Watching the work is super important. Find out if the price range is where you want to be. And I might be jumping the gun here, but look at the price range. Make sure that studio fits in your budget. And again,
that was actually going to be my question for you. It's my wrap up question. So yes, Mike, you're jumping the gun. Or maybe you're reading my mind.
I am.
I was going to ask you the wrap up question.
Yeah.
So tell us, what are some key points that a couple should be asking video companies when they are inquiring to make sure that they are working with a professional company to ensure that their wedding day is perfect event? So you're on, Mike.
Doing the research is probably the most important thing. And unfortunately, no one can do that for you because a wedding is so personalized. We get plenty of emails where, couples will say, hey, what's your price? And that's okay. I mean, a lot of times what we found is they don't know what questions they're supposed to be asking in the first place, right? And so we're there to, inform, not sell. That's the way we approach things. I never tell somebody, hey, you should be spending this amount of money or else you're not, you can't hire us. I mean, we do have our, packages and collections that start at certain rates. So that is, a baseline to, your budgetary constraints. So if you can't afford a certain studio's work, or, there's compromise.
Right.
We all live in the real world. Money doesn't fall from the sky. I get it.
So they have to understand what their budget is, because like you said, I mean, they could really want it and dream it. But I mean, ultimately, we've already talked about the starting price for something that you produce.
Right. So you look at that. Look at the work, make sure the work matches the style. And now our work is more story-based. It's more, we do want to be creative and cinematic. One of the trends that's currently out there is more that moody look, even in wedding filmmaking. And there's nothing, I think that style is really cool. It's not something we want to do or create. So other studios offer, different styles of work. So find a studio that produces the work in more or less within a budget range. Now,
can I just interrupt you for 1 second about that? Trends.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're going to talk about like the questions to ask, but you talked about the moody look right now.
Yeah.
That is a trend.
Yeah.
3 years ago, I want to say light and airy.
Yeah.
3 years prior to that was saturated color.
Yeah.
I think you handle your product kind of how I handle it. I'm very aware of the trends,
right?
But trends are trends.
Yeah.
So why haven't you gone with the trend?
Because to me, and again, that can visually look cool. I mean, there's not only trends, but like studios do different work, right? So I didn't follow that trend because it's not what we create. There were studios, even right along that do really unique stuff. There's a studio out of California that's a commercial studio and also does weddings. They're called Shark Pig, right? I'm a huge fan. I love their work, but it's very much like a 60s handheld camera floating around like a film, right? So it's very like ethereal and kind of, bouncing around to different shots. And it
sounds super cool.
It is cool. And when I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's really cool, but it's not our product. So that's where, there's a lot of different there are a lot of different studios, and there are a lot of different ways that you can go about telling, someone's story. So find the studio that tells it in the way that you do. Don't get me wrong. Most studios are not going to be as eclectic as Shark Pig is, hence their name. But, it's really cool. And there's Fiore Films in New York, and she does amazing work, and it's a different style. It is a bit darker and moodier, but she's got a story-based element to what she does. So again, find the product that you most connect with, that you feel is going to be a good investment, because it is an investment, and it does become an heirloom, years down the road, right? Mm-hmm. To you and to your family. Your kids end up watching it, if you decide children are, part of the picture for you. So this is the way you're going to be documenting your day. And the reason why we didn't go in that route is because it's not...
Timestamps it maybe?
Yeah, it does timestamp it a bit. And for us, I want a product that is going to, memorialize the day, tell a great story. I'd rather invest in not just the latest trend, but something that if you watch 10 years from now, the only thing that should look trendy about your film is the fashion.
Correct. Right.
In my opinion.
Yes.
That's my opinion, right? So find someone that you connect with that is producing a product, that you're going to want to create. And then ultimately, back to a lot of the points that we've touched so far, is find a studio that is going to be great to work with and is going to be in the style that you're going to want to have your experience the day of, right? And that's something that I go over, in our consultations. It's hard to verbalize an experience, but I typically equate it to this. Have you ever been to a restaurant where you got a really great meal and the wait staff was not so good? It's as simple as that. And that usually, we've all been there. We've all had dinner where like, oh my goodness, my steak or whatever I had, my meal was amazing. And like, you're like, but the wait staff, like, what's going on, right? And so like, you just got turned off, and it wasn't, as fun of an experience where, Saturday night, my wife and I went out, and you know what? The bartender created that experience. It was more of a, here we had plexiglass set up at the bar, and we were sitting at the bar, and there's another couple next to us. We weren't with them, but the bartender created, this energy and this atmosphere of fun that got everybody, in a really great mood and made our experience that much better. So, having the right professionals around you that are going to create the mood that you want. And again, we're not there for entertainment. Your band or your DJ is going to handle that portion of it, but your photographer and your wedding film team is going to be with you from the time you're getting ready, through, your party dancing.
Pretty much all day.
And you want to make sure that those people that are around you are going to be, fluffing your dress when it needs to be fluffed, and and telling you how to best walk, or hey, making recommendations that are going to make your day a better experience. So that's our philosophy and how we approach it.
So, Mike, where can our listeners find you?
All the major social media platforms. So we are on, on Instagram, Facebook. Artistic Wedding Films is the handle, and also on our website, www.artisticweddingfilms.com. We have tons of reviews on the Knot and Wedding Wire, so you can go and see and read on experiences that other couples have had with us, and that's super important. We've had mothers of the bride, and we've had parents, not just mothers of the bride. We've had parents leave us reviews. We've had both brides and grooms leave us reviews. So we try to encourage that, so that other couples can, when they're doing their research, kind of back to that comment, can get to know us the best possible prior to setting up a phone call. So that phone call is when they get to know us. So yeah, having those different platforms has been super helpful to the success of our business.
I also think, though, too, just to kind of add in there, that if you are planning a wedding, which obviously you are if you're listening to us now, Mike's page is a really great page just to kind of see some inspiration. I mean, you have a lot of samples up there of what is out there, the trends that are out there, the decor. It's in your video. It's in your, not videos, films. Haha. See that, Mike? I caught myself. Films. Anyway, Mike, I am super honored, and I enjoyed having you here for my second podcast. So thank you, Mike, for joining us.
This has been so much fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Wedding Secrets Unveiled. I appreciate you being here. So if you enjoyed this episode, I want to tell you something. I encourage you to check out our website at sarahzarella.com. We love photographing while having fun, of course. Check out our podcast page on our website for upcoming episodes with your local wedding experts. Listen in as we help you plan your epic event. You can subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening, so you never miss an episode. And I would so appreciate if you left a fabulous review for this show on Apple Podcast. Even better, share it with a friend. It's a great way to show support and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening.